Could Iroh actually be half dragon? Now, this theory sounds crazy, but it has more evidence than you might expect. So hit that subscribe button and we're going to break down all of the evidence that Iroh could be half dragon. Iroh has one signature move that no other firebender in the entire Avatar universe can pull off in the same way, and the official explanation tells us that he just learned it from dragons. So go back and actually watch his scenes through and through, and you start to notice that the explanation we were given might be hiding something a lot stranger about who and what he actually is. Most fans treat the Dragon of the West thing as a fun honorary title. He earned it because he claimed to have hunted down the last dragon, and because of that one terrifying trick where he exhales a wave of fire straight from his mouth. If you actually go through the show and the expanded universe and all the comics and the books and try to count how many characters can do that firebending technique clearly and on demand, that list is pretty much zero. Ozai does kind of pull it off during Sozin's Comet when he is artificially boosted by the sun. Azula also kind of can pull it off in that same window, and Aang kind of does a roar after he meets the dragons in person, but Iroh meanwhile casually does it in his 60s from inside a prison cell, and he's able to do it while shouting and with a belly full of tea and with zero comet assistance. That alone should make you raise an eyebrow. Breathing fire is presented in the series as one of the most advanced and dangerous firebending techniques in existence, something that almost everyone needs to either be supercharged by a celestial event or be trained directly by a dragon or have royal blood pretty much. Iroh treats it like clearing his throat. The standard story for Iroh is that he studied with Ren and Shaw, the two last living dragons, and they taught him their original style of firebending. That part is fully canon and that's not really disputed. But here's where it gets interesting. When Aang and Zuko later go to the Sun Warrior Temple to take the same trial, they barely scrape through it together, leaning on each other every step of the way. In that same episode, we learn that Iroh did the entire trial alone. He climbed the mountain by himself, solved the puzzles by himself, and stood in front of the two ancient fire masters by himself. And he walked back down with their blessing. Two of the most gifted firebenders of their generation needed to team up to survive what one slightly chubby, retired old general did by himself. That's absolutely crazy. You could brush that off as Iroh being unusually skilled or having huge wisdom in his older age, but the problem is that everything else about him keeps quietly stacking on top of it. His firebending style has almost nothing in common with the rest of the modern Fire Nation. Where Ozai and Azula draw their power from rage and dominance, Iroh's bending pulls from breath, vitality, and a kind of internal warmth that everyone else in the Fire Nation had forgotten. In fact, it's that internal warmth and fire-breathing ability that traces back to the dragons themselves. The original firebending of the dragons was about life energy, the literal heartbeat in your chest, and Iroh embodies that to a degree that nobody else in the entire Avatar universe even comes close to. And then there's the tea thing, which I think is the part that I can't stop thinking about. Iroh's obsession with tea is treated as a running joke, a wholesome quirk to balance out his terrifying combat ability. But look at the actual folklore behind it and the joke gets very weird very quickly. Oolong tea, the genre of tea that Iroh drinks more than any other in the show, gets its name from the Chinese word Wulong, which translates directly to black dragon. And to add on top of that, one of the oldest legends about how Oolong got the name describes a tea farmer in the Ming Dynasty coming face to face with a huge black dragon, fleeing in terror and returning the next day to find the abandoned green leaves transformed into something jade colored with gold tips at the ends, which were then brewed into tea named in the honor of the dragon that touched them. Other versions of the legend describe the curled, twisting shape of the finished tea leaves as resembling the body of a dragon, or the trail of its fiery breath. So what does Iroh do every single day, religiously in every spare moment he gets? He drinks black dragon tea. He brews it himself, he heats it himself, which got him in trouble. He talks about it like it's sacred, and then, with a kettle still warm beside him, he turns around and exhales fire out of his lungs in a way that no other human in the show can even match. A lot of fans assume that tea is just flavor, a piece of cultural world building meant to give him personality. But the way the writers keep tying the two together starts to feel like a hint hidden in plain sight. He pours hot tea down his throat and shortly afterwards, hot fire comes back out of it. The connection is so on the nose that it almost passes you by because it's being delivered through one of the most beloved characters in animation history. Further, in many folklore pieces about dragons, one of the things that fuels their ability to breathe fire is actually tea. They store the tea in their gut and use that to fuel the fire. If you think about it, that's exactly what Iroh is doing. And then while we're at it, we also need to look at lightning generation. Iroh teaches Zuko that lightning comes from separating the energies of yin and yang inside of yourself, holding them apart, and letting them meet again in a controlled explosion. That is not standard firebending. That's a description of cosmic balance, the kind of internal energy work that the classical Chinese mythology gets reserved for celestial beings and, what do you know, dragons. There is also a small detail that almost everyone glances past, which is the dragon emblem on his shoulder armor. In the original animated series, Iroh's armor carries a dragon insignia in a different color from the standard Fire Nation symbol worn by his brother and his nephew. The in-universe explanation is that it ties to his nickname, the Dragon of the West. But think about how rigid of a culture the Fire Nation actually is. There's no way in hell that they would allow any type of personal insignia or identification or any type of fun reference like that on their uniforms. Now, how does this make Iroh half dragon? Well, the show never tells you straight that Iroh is half dragon or has dragon DNA within him. That's the whole point of a theory like this. You look at what was shown and you ask whether it adds up to something that the writers were quietly pointing at but could never confirm. Well, look at the Avatar universe. It's full of beings that are partially something else. Lion turtles carried the entire civilization on their back, koi fish that are spirits that walk among us, and the Avatar even fused with the embodiment of the light spirit, Rava. But then look at the animals. They're all mixtures of two. We have possum chickens, puma goats, dragon mooses, dragon hawks. There's just so many mixes. The world allows for hybrid existences as a baseline, and dragons in that world are not animals in the Western sense. They are the original firebenders, intelligent enough to teach humans, spiritual enough to be venerated as masters, and powerful enough that human firebending is essentially a diluted echo of their natural ability. So if we take seriously the idea that some firebenders carry more of that original dragon essence in them than others, Iroh becomes the obvious case study. In fact, Iroh could be a hybrid between a dragon and a human, or maybe a spirit dragon, and that is why Iroh was able to go into the spirit world after he died. Or, in fact, did he even die? That's the question. How did he make it into the spirit world? Does that come from his dragon side, his dragon spirit side? We also see from the panda bear in the forest in the first season of Avatar how spirits often given a role to protect an area of the world, or a group of things, a group of life. The panda was to protect the forest, a group of living trees. Iroh, on the other hand, he was tasked with protecting the last dragons. So maybe he was a dragon spirit to protect the rest of the dragons who survived. Iroh was even able to see Roku's dragon carrying Aang through the sky on the winter solstice. Nobody else was able to see it, only Iroh and the avatars, and the avatars are the bridge between the spirit world and the real world. So for Iroh to see this, it tells you he definitely has a much deeper spiritual connection than anyone else, but maybe it's because he is half dragon, he is a half dragon spirit. And in the Legend of Korra, when Iroh is actually in the spirit world, what is he doing? He's hosting tea parties. His whole purpose, both as a spirit and on the earth, may have been to protect the dragons because he was one. He knew exactly how they worked, how they operated, how they breathed fire, their techniques, and he was judged as worthy. Despite being a member of the royal family who almost wiped out the dragons, he was given the role and the ability to learn from the ancient masters. This is a role that would not go to anyone else remotely close unless they had a deep connection with the spirits, and possibly because Iroh was half dragon. Hope you enjoyed this fun little theory. It's always good to get these Avatar theories going. This was one of the cores of the fandom back in the day, and I love to bring these back. So thanks so much for watching, guys. I really hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, leave a like and subscribe. Leave a comment down below on what you think of the theory and how this could work. And if you made it this far, drop a thank Mr. Iroh down in the comments down below, and I'll be sure to leave you a heart. If you want to hear more Avatar lore just like this, hit that subscribe button and there'll be plenty more like this.